I was going to move over just to
You
mess with
jackass.
you. He just spent like minutes centering it perfectly. So like when it went live, I was going to be over like a foot just to.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to First Drink Daily. And as Paul alluded to, there were some changes on just software side, nothing major. And I had to reposition Paul in this split shot because normal shot, he's fine, but this shot of whatever. And so then when we came back, he was off-centered, and that's, yep.
Oh, well.
Anyways, today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out at cloudberrylab.com/FRD for a free trial offer and learn how to back up your data a little bit better to Amazon, Google, Backblaze, quite literally anybody. And, yeah, this bad boy. Paul?
Yeah.
This thing, how is it so far?
It's nice.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
moving
I
on.
mean, no, it's awesome. I mean, as far as the build quality goes, I mean, I think there's basically this device, and then there's the iPhone 10, and the rest of it can just stop pretending. But, obviously compared to its predecessor, it's very similar. There's a major improvement to the camera, and then those stupid emoji things, which I didn't even write about. So I think if you have an S8, S8 Plus, you don't have to worry about this generation. But if you have any other kind of smartphone and you're in line for an upgrade this year, I have a hard time imagining any phone being much better than this. Build quality, just a software maturity. There's a lot of stuff going on here. The negatives, such as they are, it's Samsung, right? So Samsung just dumps a bunch of stuff on this device, as they always do. And managing that is a little bit difficult. There's a payoff to it, though, because there are customizations you can do in their version of Android that are not possible in stock Android. And I find some of them to be very desirable, to be honest. So that's interesting. There are duplicate things in there, like the Assistant, and they have their own mail app, their own calendar app, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Samsung, they're certainly driving down their own road. But software overall hasn't been as terrible as I worried, and that's a kind of a minor plus. The camera, of course, is the most interesting thing to me personally. I know this thing's going to take great photos out in the day when it's sunny and beautiful. Most smartphone cameras do. The question for me is the low light photo stuff. And I think I talked about this, and I hope I already talked about my theory about how I thought this thing would perform based on the fact that it does an automatic aperture change based on the quality of the light. And in my first round of tests, I literally had to wait for it to get dark yesterday and then invent some like pinpoints of light using candles mostly. I did a bunch of low light photos. I published a couple in my first impressions article side by side with the Pixel 2 XL. And in most cases, the Pixel 2 XL is better, but that's like my personal preference. In other words, the way the Pixel 2 XL works out, and all the other Pixels and the Nexus phones before them, is that you can focus on a light source in a dim. If you imagine like a dimly lit scene, whatever it is, a room outdoors, whatever. There's a lamp maybe up in the corner, or a candle, or a backlighting on a bar or something. And if you touch the screen to focus on that light source, the rest of it dims down and the light gets accentuated. And then there's an HDR effect where the colors really pop. And you've seen my photos. I've talked about this a lot. Some of them are just amazing. And so my theory with the Samsung was that because it would try to auto correct for darkness, that you wouldn't get that same effect. What it would do instead is try to light the room without using a flash by allowing more light into the camera. And it would probably result in a picture that most people would find to be desirable, right? In other words, you and your buddies are in a dark bar at night or a restaurant and you're taking a group photo, or you're outside at night with a group of people, or just outside at night taking a photo of a thing, whatever. You want to see the thing in the photo, and you don't want it to be grainy and dark and whatever. And sure enough, I mean, again, I've only had one night of experiments with it, but that's exactly what it does. And the interesting thing is the photos it takes are actually pretty fantastic. The problem is I've seen the way the Pixel takes photos. So when you look at them side by side, it's like there are some, I didn't put any in the article, but there are some instances where the Samsung photo I think actually looks a little nicer. But there are more instances where it's not the effect that I want. In other words, it lights the scene a little too much. And in doing so, often the pictures are kind of soft looking, where the hard edges of things are kind of smoothed out a little bit. It changes the colors a little bit. You get kind of reds and browns and oranges that aren't really there in real life. But you do get to see the things in the room. And so if you if you imagine like there's a serial killer, in the corner with a knife, you take a picture of the room with the Pixel, you wouldn't see the serial killer, but the light in the room would look awesome.
Yeah.
With the Samsung, you would very clearly see the serial killer. So I think it's the phone for serial killers. Obviously, is what I'm trying to say. No, I think it probably addresses the needs of most people. I think most people who saw what this thing could do in low light would think, oh my God, this is really neat. This is what I want. For my particular needs, I like it. I mean, it's better than most cameras. It's better than an iPhone in low light, but it's interesting. It's exactly what I thought it was going to be. So far, again, only one night, but so far so good.
One night in S9. That should be that's going to be the title of this episode, I think. Yeah.
Or S3, as I sometimes call it, or vice versa.
Amazon would be proud. Speaking of Amazon, a bunch of their stuff leaked today, and not like the traditional leaks that we typically think of, like hardware and plans. It was actually, correct me if I'm wrong, related strictly to their Prime Video. Is that what popped out?
Yeah, so one of the things I talk a lot about with Amazon is that they have this unique ability to combine perks from physical and digital, meaning that you get this Amazon Prime subscription, which is a physical goods thing. You can get shipments in 2 days typically. But then you get all these digital perks related to their music service, their video service, cloud storage, on and on it goes. So one of those perks, of course, is Amazon Prime Video. Amazon never gives us any data on Amazon Prime Video, or really on Prime, at least any meaningful data. And now we have some data because it leaked. And I did like 10 seconds of Google research to try to compare some of these numbers to what we see from rival services. And so the most obvious one is that there are 75 million Prime members. 26 million actually use Prime Video. This is the United States, I should say. That's about half the number of people that use Netflix in the United States. Netflix worldwide has 120 million subscribers. We don't know what the Amazon worldwide number. Hulu has about 17 million. So you can kind of see where these things fall in the scope of things. But looking past that, I think the most interesting thing about this data is how successful Amazon is or isn't in using Prime Video as a driver for Prime, the subscription, or how successful they are using Prime, the subscription, as a driver for Prime Video, right? Because there's kind of a cross there. Some people may literally subscribe to Prime because they want to get Prime Video. And if you figure out like how much Netflix costs in a year, Prime Video is less. I mean, our Prime is less, and you get all the other stuff. So it's kind of not a no-brainer, but it's a good deal. And if you are a Prime subscriber because you want the shipment stuff, this is a perk. And so you would, why not use it? It's free and that kind of thing. And there's some interesting data there. I guess the important thing is that this thing has a sizable audience. There are millions of people that come on board every year because of Prime Video to Prime, or who come on board to Prime Video because of Prime, the subscription as well. And the original content thing is kind of interesting. And that's another place where I did 10 seconds of internet research. Netflix, let's see, last year, paid $6 billion on original content. It plans to spend between $7 and $8 billion this year. Hulu spent $2.5 billion last year. Apple's budget for original content is only $1 billion, but they just entered the market. That will probably go up. Amazon, by comparison, spent, I should say, last year about $5 billion. So less than Netflix, so a lot less than Netflix will spend this year, but about double what Hulu spent.
Yeah, I'd be very curious to know what like maybe ABC, CBS, and NBC spend on original content.
Or HBO, which is an interesting kind of comparison too, right? Because they do things like Game of Thrones, which has to be tremendously expensive. They don't have the same kind of data for each show, but they do have some data for certain shows. Like we know that Man in the High Castle's kind of a big deal on Amazon. The Grand Tour's kind of a big deal. There's a show called Transparent, which is about that transgender guy, which has won all kinds of awards. But actually that one has not really worked out financially for Amazon. It just gives them a bit of cachet because it's like an award-winning show or whatever. They use, it's funny because one of the shows they talk about I had never heard of, called Good Girls Revolt. This show cost $81 million to make, which I mean, think about that's like can you even imagine a movie? I mean, other than like the biggest Hollywood blockbuster costing $81 million. It was only streamed 52,000 times by viewers who joined Prime specifically to take advantage of new video content. It did have 1.6 million viewers in the U.S. overall, but they canceled it because it just didn't make sense. The cost, they don't have this for every show, but it's interesting. Like they figure out the cost. Amazon does to figure, to determine whether a show is viable. It's the cost per the cost per new customer for each show based on the production and marketing costs, and then the number of people come on board just to see that show. The cost of that one was over $1,500.
Whoa.
So they paid $1,500 per viewer to make this show. That doesn't make any sense. By comparison, the Grand Tour cost Amazon only $49 per subscriber, and Man in the High Castle, which I believe is their most popular show so far, costs $63 per subscriber. So when you consider that an Amazon Prime subscription is $99 per year, you can kind of figure out whether these things make any sense at all. I mean, obviously, well, we'll see how maybe this will change over time. I mean, for example, they're coming up with a Lord of the Rings show. They've committed to 2 years. It's going to cost them at least $750 million to make this thing.
Whoa.
Figuring on the total production and marketing costs over 2 seasons, it's basically triple the cost of Man in the High Castle. So for this thing to make sense, it has to draw 3 times as many viewers as Man in the High Castle. I don't think it's going to have a problem doing that. Man in the High Castle is in the scope of things. I don't think that big of a deal. I mean, it wasn't, it was a semi-famous book, but it's just like one story. It was already made into a movie, I think, in the 70s or early 80s with Rutger Hauer. Am I thinking of the right thing? Nope. Sorry, that's a different movie. Never mind that. Similar movie, kind of alternate future history where the Germans win World War II. But the Lord of the Rings is huge, right? So this could be their Game of Thrones, and they're making an even bigger bet, I guess, on original content, if you will, going forward, just by evidence by that.
And
a lot of stuff there. It's a pretty amazing bit of data.
Yeah, and now we know why. Well, I don't know why but I can say I no longer pay for cables because everything I need is now on one of these 3 services. I already have Amazon because I order too much stuff from there, and then we pay for Hulu and Netflix, and there's more entertainment than we'll ever need. So, yeah,
we do the same, and we right now we're using Google's YouTube TV. Actually, it's funny. We're gonna have to pare this down at some point, but we also pay for the lower tier of Sling TV. Just for house hunters. And actually this year we're paying for MLB TV because we want to watch the Red Sox. And so when you add all that up, we're probably spending about $3,000 a month on TV. It's but we have choice.
Yeah. And you can watch it anywhere.
And we're rich, so it's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Good stuff. And then this is a very Amazon filled show, but I think that's okay. Amazon with if you're a Twitch Prime user, they are now basically doing their iteration of games with gold, and you're now getting free games.
Yeah, I still don't completely understand what this offering is. To my knowledge, neither company, and Twitch is owned by Amazon, has actually formally announced, this is the deal. But there is a page on Twitch that explains the perks you get if you combine your Twitch account with your Amazon Prime account, right? So some people might have signed up for both these services using different email addresses or whatever. You can combine them now. When you do, you get Twitch Prime, whatever that means. But you also get free games and free game content every month. I assume this is all PC based, right? It would have to be only on the PC. Yeah.
So, and then
another no brainer. Perk Prime when you think about Prime Perk. Sorry, when you think about it, if you're a gamer.
And then one last quick thing here, Paul. You say that Microsoft is in talk to join Movies Anywhere. This is actually really big news if they can ink this.
Yeah, this is for people in the Microsoft ecosystem. This has been one of many sore spots, and so we know that they canceled Groove Music Pass last year, and I was wondering if movies and TV would be the next thing on the chopping block. Evidence of that was that when Disney used to have a service that I think was called Disney Movies Anywhere. And you could combine your accounts with your, iTunes account, your Google Play Movies and TVs account, your Microsoft Movies and TV account, and some other, whatever other video services. Disney switched this thing over to something just called Movies Anywhere. They have most of the movie studios involved. And now what that means is if you buy movies, if you could have bought movies on Apple like 10 years ago, but if you combine your accounts to this thing, you can access them on Google or on well, not on Microsoft because they're not there anymore. And that's neat on a number of levels. The problem is when that happened, Microsoft was the one company left out in the cold. They aren't part of it. And so when you think about all the different ways you can watch digital video online, the movie studios that make the content and the devices that put it onto your TV and the services that you might use, Apple, iTunes, for example, Google Play Movies and TV. This bridges all of that stuff, and it's such a no-brainer to do. If you have content in different places like I do, it lets you access most of it from any of those places. So maybe you were Apple for a long time, and now you went Google. Well, guess what? You can access your whole collection, not your whole collection, probably 2/3, 3/4 of your collection.
Yeah.
It's amazing, except Microsoft's not there. So the only way you can get Microsoft's service and the content that it has onto a TV today is to use an Xbox One, which is expensive and cumbersome, frankly, as a living room device, or to use a Windows 10 PC, I should say, with Miracast, which is terrible, as Brad explains every single day on the podcast. And people have been asking for two things. One, mobile clients. Let's get this thing on Android and iOS. And two, let's get this thing in Movies Anywhere, because then I can use my Roku with Google Play, whatever it's called, to access that content. Genius, right? Microsoft has literally no comment on the mobile client thing. I've asked this question numerous times. I think what they said was no news to share. No comment, basically. But they did reveal to me that they are talking to Disney about getting their service into Movies Anywhere, and that would be bonus time. That would be fantastic. You can also think about it from the flip side. There are two flip sides. One is that means that if you did buy content from Microsoft, a lot of it would be available on a mobile device using the Movies Anywhere client or using, the Google Play client or whatever. That's neat. But it also means that you don't have to buy a specialty device to see this stuff on a TV in your living room, maybe, depending on the content. So a lot of your content would work through an Apple TV or through a Roku or through your smart TV using Apple service, Google service, and then there's several others. There's a bunch of different services and apps that are available. So I feel like I explained that poorly and at great length, but this is a big deal.
It's part of the question.
It really is.
One of the things I do want to point out, though, and I don't think you mentioned this could be how Microsoft exits, though, because they could enable this functionality. Be like, look, you bought all your content here. We're allowing you to port it anywhere else. And in 2 years, we're going to stop.
Yeah. So for that to work fully, all of the content providers, and I mean movie studios, basically, but also TV studios when you think about it, because you can only buy TV shows, right? There's no way to rent a TV show. So renting right now through Microsoft is a no-risk thing. You're just using it temporarily. But when you buy content, you've got this money you spent, you've got this content sitting there in a library. And if you can't access that where you are, you're kind of stuck.
Yep.
Not every movie studio is in Movies Anywhere today. Most of them are, right? And when you look at the big five or whatever it is, I think 4 of them are there or whatever. 4 of 6 or 5 of 6, whatever the number is. And listen, having an exit strategy is fine. I have been advising people for years, back when this thing was called Xbox Video, not to trust Microsoft with this. I just don't believe they have the long-term constitution to keep this thing going. So yeah, I wouldn't look at that as a negative. If this works out to be an out, great. The other thing is, imagine if the movies and TV client in Windows 10 continued to work with all of that content, even though Microsoft wasn't selling content through the store. Guess what? That's still a win, because if you prefer to watch movies on your Surface laptop or whatever on a plane, you're using a UWP app, which is going to give you the best possible performance and battery life, and it's still the best way to watch that content, right? Imagine you had 900 movies in iTunes and you want to watch it on your PC. Movies and TV is a way better way to do that than iTunes. iTunes is a pig of a program.
Right. It's
terrible for battery life. This is still it would still be a win. I know, it's weird to say this, but even if Microsoft exits this market now, them getting into this service would make it okay.
Well,
I think even better than the Spotify thing, really.
Yeah.
Paul, assuming the compatibility.
I've got some homework for you for tomorrow. For Friday. I don't know if we'll do this every week. We've done it a couple
We're going to do this
now.
every week. I was going to say, is this like the new thing? Okay, what is it?
So tomorrow's episode, we're going to talk about acquisitions that Microsoft could make, but not like the obvious ones. Don't, because it'd be like we're all great. Oh, go buy Spotify and Roku. Think about like...
Yeah. Actually, I think most of the things that people say Microsoft should buy, blah, 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 they're wrong for so many reasons.
But your homework is to think about unusual acquisitions that would be interesting for Microsoft to snap up. So,
Okay.
You got anything else for today?
No, I'm going to continue, playing with the phone. I've got a review coming of the Huawei Mate Pro 10, which is another flagship smartphone. I've actually held on to that for this because I want to be able to compare it to the Samsung. So I'll probably publish that, maybe not today, but in the next, several days at least. It's basically there. Yeah, I guess that's most of it. How about you?
No, it's not snowing today, so I'm in a slightly better mood.
Yeah.
The only other
that's what I wanted to talk to you about, if you don't mind.
snow.
Well, no, not exactly. You mentioned the other day that, and I don't remember if it was on the podcast, if it was private, but your daughter, seeing that it was late at night, wanted to go outside and go walking because that's what you guys do a lot when it's nice out.
Yep.
And I think what you said to me was that it's actually light where you live close to 8 p.m. now.
Yep.
Right? Now, when you said that, I thought to myself, I might have even said something aloud, like, there's no way that's true. That can't be true.
It is
because
true.
the sun sets here at like 6:30, or whatever time. I'd have to look it up. But I was talking to my wife this morning, and I said, I told her this story. And I said, I know from my own experience, like we would go swimming with the kids when they were little. And in the middle of July, the height of the summer, we would be in the lake and the sun would go down and it was 8 o'clock. And you are already at that time here in March. And it's not like you live on a different continent. How could that be? And she actually, my wife, who is much smarter than me, said, Brad lives in the far western end of the Eastern time zone. And as you move west, that's what changes. You must have a darker morning and then a lighter night.
Yep.
So you know this exactly. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Yep. For whatever reason, I had a hard time with this, And, for example, we go to Europe in the summer. And when we go to Europe in the summer, Paris, the Netherlands, whatever, it is late. It is light until 10 to 10:30 at night, easily.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we kind of experienced this last year when we
Amsterdam.
went to the Netherlands. Even in May, it's light way later. And I don't know if that I believe that's latitude based part of it. The further north you are. But yeah, she was saying, she's like, yeah, that makes total sense. I'm sure it is light until almost 8 o'clock. He lives in Ohio, which is the western side of the Eastern time zone. And I was like, no, I have not. I can't even contemplate this.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's high summer, like the longest day of the year, what time does the sun set for you?
About 9:15 p.m.
Yeah, that's great. That's like almost European.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
Because
now, but what about the winters must suck though in the morning. So it must be pitch black in the morning.
Right now? Yeah, it is.
Well, I mean, later. I mean, here, like, for example, we just did daylight savings, so it got skewed back an hour. But I got up this morning at 6:15. It was pitch black. But a week ago, 6:15 would have been light. But the sun must rise at like 8 o'clock or something.
Now, my watch tells me it rose at about 7:30 this morning.
7:30. Okay. So it probably rose here 6:15-ish, somewhere in there, 6, I don't know, well, not 6 o'clock, 6:15-ish, let's say. By 6:30, certainly. That's really, I don't know why this blows my mind. The world is round.
It's also tilted, I believe, at 22 degrees, Paul.
Yes, it is. Right. Yep. Okay. Well, on today's episode of Science is Fun, Paul discovers time zones.
And geography, for that matter.
Geography, basic geography. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the problem becomes having a little kid is that she associates it's dark, we go to bed.
Yep.
Well, we typically put her to bed around 8 o'clock. Well, when it's light until 9:15, she's just like, "Why am I in bed? This isn't fair."
Exactly.
And it's
exactly. Yeah, listen, I'm 50-something years old. I can't even figure this out. It's reasonable that your daughter would be confused by this,
I think we're going to change the title of the show to Paul Doesn't Understand Round.
All I can say is when I fly, I can see that the world is flat. Somebody actually said that, by the way.
Yeah, we're going to end it there. All right, folks, today's very lovely and science-filled show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out at cloudberrylab.com/FRD for that free trial offer. And we'll catch you right back here tomorrow on a live show, which is actually Friday. And Friday is good news because it means I don't have to see Paul on Saturday. And have yourselves a wonderful Thursday.